Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Harry Fling Wrestling. I am your host, Harry Fling, and today's topic of the day is another episode of Superstar Spotlight, a show within a show, if you will. It's probably the third installment now. Today we're going to be talking about the masterpiece, Chris Masters. I gotta flex if I'm going to be talking about this guy right here. Oh, yes. We're watching some of his second run in WWE, which we're going to get into in more detail shortly. But we'll start off with a little basic information here. His real name is Christopher Mordetsky. Christopher Mordetsky, born January the 8th of 1983. He is currently 42 years old, still wrestling as it stands. And he's billed from Los Angeles, California, standing 6'4", 270 pounds. And boy, oh boy, he got that name, the Masterpiece, because his body was so perfect it would appear he was sculpted out of stone. Anyone who's ever seen him in real life say he's built like a wall. Oh my God. And you have to know there's some steroids involved in that because it's almost unnatural. I could work out as hard as I could, but I don't think I'll ever be as big as Chris Masters. So, I actually saw him in a dark match in January of 2005 at a live Raw show, Monday Night Raw on Long Island at the Nassau Coliseum on a Monday night of all times, right after New Year's Day of 2005. So there were vignettes. No, actually there weren't vignettes yet. He was actually in a dark match, and I forget who he faced. Might have been like Val Venus or Rob Conway or whoever was on the Raw roster at that time, one of those lower card guys. No, it wouldn't have been Rob Conway because he was in La Resistance. But at any rate, he had a great match, and he had a great showing, just in the short time that I saw him. And over time, they show these vignettes of, like, Michelangelo's David, or statues that looked like the Michelangelo's David, and saying, this is the next greatest thing in the history of art. This is the masterpiece. So this ran for several weeks until February 21st of 2005, where Chris Masters made his Raw debut against Stevie Richards, and that match is notorious for Masters having broke Richards' nose with a Polish hammer. Now, originally his finisher was not the Master Lock, it was the Polish hammer. Richards suffered a broken nose, and that was enough to get Masters over as sort of not necessarily a killer heel, but very dominant in the ring, like an alpha male. He doesn't know his own strength, in other words, so, he can injure somebody just like that. So there was a little trepidation, I think, from officials. Maybe he wasn't safe to work with in the beginning. People are always green when they start out, and for the most part they get better, and then there's those who don't. So the Master Lock, within a short amount of time, the Master Lock became his finisher. It's a full Nelson submission hold, and it all started with jobbers he would defeat every week. Stevie Richards, Val Venus, who were some other lower card Raw guys at the time? Lance Cade maybe there, or Shelton. No, Shelton Benjamin was doing pretty well. It wasn't that lower card, but at any rate, those are the type of guys he was facing at the time. Eventually, got to a point where he decided to have his own segment called the Master Lock Challenge. There were plants from the audience, and a plant is somebody that's put in the audience for a specific purpose to participate in an angle on the show. So those are like developmental wrestlers. Plants from the crowd would accept his challenge. One particular moment I remember is from Backlash 2005. It was only pay-per-view to emanate from New Hampshire, May 1st, 2005, and of all people, Melissa Coates accepted the Master Lock Challenge before she became famous on the indies as Sabu's valet, kind of the genie-looking gal. I actually met Melissa Coates and Sabu 10 years ago, Legends of the Ring of 2015. Sabu, I miss him, and may he rest in peace. He wasn't the nicest person I met. He's notorious for being kind of grumpy in front of the fans, or kind of crotchety or whatever. He's not as personable as some other wrestlers you might meet. And that's just my experience with Sabu, and that's not to say he was a bad person in real life. Melissa Coates just kind of came along for the ride. They worked together on the indies, and Sabu did his pose, and she kind of did this pose right against my chest. And I'm still trying to look for that picture. It's on my old computer, which I'm trying to restore. And, from 10 years ago, that's old technology now. But yeah, I'm feeling honored to have met both before they unfortunately passed away. Melissa died in July of 2021. Actually, from complications of COVID, because this is right at the end of the tail end of the pandemic when vaccines were already coming out, and she might have had other health complications going on too. And I guess she didn't get vaccinated in time. I'm not really sure. It's been too long. So Melissa Coates took the challenge, and she obviously didn't break it. So women were allowed to accept this challenge too. Fortunately, he didn't break any bones on anybody. So he was doing that for a while until he entered his first major feud, which was up against none other than the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels, sort of an inspiration for Chris Masters as far as some of his favorite wrestlers growing up. He was always influenced by HBK. It was a favorite of Masters, and he personally said, Chris Mordetsky said, that he felt honored and privileged to wrestle him on a pay-per-view. And that they did at Unforgiven in 2005, which HBK won. I guess it was the Battle of the Sweet Chin Music versus the Master Lock, which finishing maneuver really is a masterpiece, if you will. Now, one funny anecdote, and this is neither here nor there, but it's only because Masters is involved in this promo. Maria Kanellis was the backstage interviewer back in 2005, and they were talking about Michelangelo, the artist who did Michelangelo's David, who sculpted the David statue, and Maria all of a sudden mentioned the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I'm glad she did, because when you say Michelangelo, I'm going to think of the Ninja Turtle with the orange bandana and the nunchucks. Cowabunga! So, she asked him, wait, is that the Michelangelo from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles! And she starts singing the theme song, and he cuts her off, and I thought that was so hilarious. I remember watching that 20 years ago. Oh, Maria. She was kind of witty that way, sort of underscored with her beauty and good looks. So, Masters and HBK continued to feud a little bit after that. They trade wins back and forth on Raw. But they did team up come Survivor Series when it was Team Raw versus Team SmackDown, and they had this interpromotional feud for no reason whatsoever. It's not like we even had the bragging rights concept yet. It wouldn't be for another 4 years until then. So, Team Raw, you had Shawn Michaels, The Big Show, Kane, Carlito, and Chris Masters. And around that time, Carlito and Chris Masters were two mid-card heels that decided to team up. I guess their careers weren't really going anywhere. They weren't really in the mid-card title picture as far as competing for the Intercontinental Championship is concerned. I really think Masters should have won the IC Championship or the US Championship at least once in his career in either run with WWE, either run in the company. So, Team Raw took on Team SmackDown, Batista, Randy Orton, Rey Mysterio, JBL, Bobby Lashley. Now, Eddie Guerrero was supposed to be on Team SmackDown, then he unfortunately died that weekend. He passed away, it was like 2 weekends before the Survivor Series. November of 2005. Rest in peace, Eddie. So I think that's Randy Orton was the replacement, and Randy Orton was the sole survivor. 3 years in a row, Orton survived a Survivor Series match, a traditional one. Then there was that whole ending with Undertaker, but that's another story. But back to Chris Masters, him and Carlito, after that, started to team up, and but before that, they entered the Elimination Chamber at New Year's Revolution 2006 for the WWE Championship. And Masters was actually the second to last man to be eliminated in that chamber. And the last man to be eliminated before John Cena ultimately won was Carlito. So Carlito and Chris Masters were working their way up, it seemed. That's probably the biggest push Carlito ever got. And he's somebody who always complained about his status in the company and threatened to quit many times. And he finally got released. And then he came back again. Then got released. He's a nutcase. Masters, it seemed like all was going well for him. Even got a little comedy bit part in the trial of Eric Bischoff. You remember that from December of 2005. We fought where Vince McMahon was the judge, and it was an ongoing segment for this 2-hour Raw of reasons to fire Eric Bischoff, and it was a whole trial, kind of like you're watching Judge Judy or whatever. And Masters was the bailiff, and he committed perjury because he lied about his name. Tell me your full name. Christopher Masters. Objection. His real name is Christopher Mordetsky. They actually broke kayfabe and called him Mordetsky, his birth name, his real last name. So, tried to get away with his stage name. He was kicked off, the stand, and we didn't have a bailiff the rest of the evening. And Bischoff got fired. They took out the trash. We all remember how that went. So, moving on now. I remember he got his first WrestleMania match. Actually, that might have been his only WrestleMania match, come to think of it. WrestleMania 22, they opened up. Chris Masters and Carlito opened up, but they were unsuccessful in trying to defeat Big Show and Kane for the World Tag Team Championship. And that was Big Show's first WrestleMania victory, though I think Kane got the pin, so I don't know if that really matters, so say what you will. So Carlito and Chris Masters ended up feuding because the creative decided to turn Carlito face. They had a few pay-per-view matches, which Carlito got the best of for the most part, so it didn't seem like Masters was really going to move up the card. Carlito, they put him in a program with Ric Flair. The Master Lock challenges continued with various audience members, even non-plants. Regular guy like me, I guess, who couldn't break it, even if his life depended on it. Now, we're going to fast forward to 2007. On an episode of Raw in March of 2007, Bobby Lashley, the ECW champion, came over to Raw because he was in that whole stupid Battle of the Billionaires thing, which I'm not going to get into. But he accepted the Master Lock challenge, and guess what? He broke it. So he had him in it, and Lashley's even bigger than Masters. And finally, he broke it, and Masters like, what the fuck? He actually broke it. 2 years, nobody could break that Master Lock challenge. They should have had some prize money or some incentive for that matter, and I think people would have tried even harder. And wow, that was actually incredible because that was like, in the Ruthless Aggression era, they didn't have long-term building. That was kind of a letdown of that time period. Whereas Attitude Era, they had good long-term booking. Ruthless Aggression time period, I can't really say the same. While you had great matches, the booking was kind of spotty. Touch and go, if you will. So, yeah, I think that might have hurt Masters' credibility because now that move, he's no longer seen as a threat with that finishing maneuver. So he was probably, I'd venture to say Masters was damaged goods on Raw at that point, come mid-2007. Then he got drafted to SmackDown in the 2007 WWE draft, but he didn't really do anything of note on SmackDown. I think he was in a mixed tag match. That might have either been him or Kenny Dykstra with Victoria taking on Chuck Palumbo and Michelle McCool. He was only used in very low-card matches like that, low-card feuds. And that was it, because he was released on November the 8th, 2007. Chris Masters was given his release, and they wished him all the best in his future endeavors. And I thought that was the last we were ever going to see of him. Think again, because I was wrong. Fast forward now to 2009, in the month of July. Pardon me. He actually returned to take on, I think it was MVP that night on an episode of Raw. I think it was like an open challenge for contendership purposes or something. I don't really remember the whole circumstances. But yeah, he was back as a heel again with his same masterpiece theme music where he, pose, da-da-da-da-da-da, and then finally when the song crescendo, boom, take off his robe and flex his muscles. He was still doing that. But then a face turn was imminent because I think creative realized that they'd done all that they could, as much as they could with him creatively as a heel. There wasn't much gas left in the tank for a heel Chris Masters. So, November 2009, creative decides to turn him face, and this was during the guest host time period of Raw, and the guest hosts that particular evening were none other than the late great Ozzy Osbourne, rest in peace Ozzy, and his wife Sharon. Ozzy and Sharon were the guest hosts, and they had a talent competition, and Masters entered it doing something called the Peck Dance, and he did the Peck Dance to none other than Crazy Train. Doo-doo. And the pecs would go up, so I can't do a Peck Dance, I'm not that great shape, so I'm not even going to try, but it would go something like this. Doo-doo, 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 doo-doo. You can only imagine how the rest of that would go. Masters stated himself he actually didn't like doing it. He thought it kind of devalued his character, which I think it kind of did. It made him a cheesy comedy act. The reason behind the whole Peck Dance, it was derived from a British bodybuilder named Tony Holland. I know nothing about Tony Holland other than that's where the idea for the Peck Dance was derived from. Now, Chris Masters, speaking of the cheesy comedy I alluded to a second ago, he was reduced to the comedic role because WWE hoped to avoid negative publicity tied to past wellness violations. He violated the wellness policy back in 2007, and he was suspended with like 10 other guys, and Randy Orton was on that list, but Randy Orton was exempt because he was going after the WWE title, so he got off the hook scot-free. Masters did not. So, this was after Chris Benoit died and WWE was trying to rebuild their image as far as not having a lot of guys on the roster who looked like steroid freaks, for lack of a better term. Masters unfortunately fit that bill. You notice a lot of guys in wrestling now aren't as bulky as they once were. I mean, the wellness policies makes them healthier. And the travel schedule, too. You know, back in the 80s, twice on Saturdays, twice on Sundays you'd wrestle. Hulk Hogan stated that himself. But come this generation, Triple H has made it easier, and he's made it so that people can take periodic rests and recharge their batteries and come back better than ever, which is how it should have been in the first place, but it wasn't. So, let's see. We go into 2010. He's not really doing anything. I think he was in the Rumble that year. It didn't last long. And he was actually traded to SmackDown in the 2010 supplemental draft. Now, the supplemental draft was exclusive to WWE.com. You watch the 3-hour draft on Raw, 12 noon on Tuesday. You get to watch who gets traded. And there was probably like 15 trades between Raw and SmackDown as ECW had already closed its doors. And what did he do? He was mostly on Superstars, and he got a lot of wins. He was on a hot streak winning, but they didn't put him on SmackDown, which they should have. He could have been the Intercontinental title picture with Kofi Kingston, Dolph Ziggler, even Jack Swagger. Swagger coming off the heels of a shitty world title run. Another story for another day. I actually saw Chris Masters, probably the only time... No, this is the second time I would have seen him. Miami, Florida, Survivor Series 2010. He was on Team Mysterio. Now, he had different music now as a babyface, and to some it might be generic. I actually like the theme. It's called Overdrive. It's not a Jim Johnston classic. It's from another music library done by various artists, unknown in my case. But Overdrive is a great theme. I think it's great to exercise and work out to. I do so myself. It goes... something like that. But go listen to it. Don't let me sing it to you. I'm going to botch it for you. So, he was on Team Mysterio, but was eliminated early on, and his teammates were obviously Rey Mysterio, the team captain, the Big Show, MVP, and Kofi Kingston. It was Big Show and Mysterio who survived, and they defeated the team of Team Del Rio, which is team captain Alberto Del Rio, Dashing Cody Rhodes, Jack Swagger, Drew McIntyre, and Tyler Rex. I remember nobody reacted to Tyler Rex that night. It was hilarious. And only because they didn't know who the hell he was. He wasn't booked right. That's what happens when you don't book somebody and you don't give a good enough presentation of who the wrestler is, and no one's going to give two shits about them. So, sorry, that's just the way it ended up happening. Masters continued to kind of flounder there, and they put him on NXT Season 4, which I'm in the midst of watching. He was originally the mentor, the pro, to rookie Byron Saxton. I can't believe Byron Saxton ever tried out to wrestle. Saxton sucked in the ring. FCW, NXT, WWE, whatever. I'm glad he got the announcer job because he's not the greatest color commentator, Byron Saxton is, but he's certainly better at that than physically in the ring. But Byron had a lot of charisma. He had good looks. He was always compared to Carlton from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, I believe it was. There was a segment on NXT where actually there was a match, a battle royal with all the pros at the time, and Dolph Ziggler, who was a fellow pro on that show, won that battle royal and decided to trade his rookie, Jacob Novak, for Byron Saxton. And I'm a big Jacob Novak fan, even though Novak is pretty much unknown to most people in the wrestling universe. It was somebody who I thought should have gone further, but we'll talk about Jacob Novak another time. So Chris Masters acquired Jacob Novak via trade, but that partnership, that pro-rookie relationship didn't last too long as Novak was the first to be eliminated. And then Masters didn't do much else on NXT, but he did have one great match on SmackDown. They finally, around this time, maybe a little before NXT, they started to put him on SmackDown in matches, even before Survivor Series of 2010. February 2011, on an episode of SmackDown, he had this really great underrated match with Drew McIntyre. And McIntyre was really hitting his strides, though he didn't have that preferential treatment backing of Mr. McMahon like he did a year prior. Lots of high-impact spots. Masters really improved his speed and agility. He was so green in his first run, I thought. He did so much better in 2010, 2011. I remember Masters hitting like a full Nelson, like a pump handle slam, and he got Drew all the way up in the air, and bam, just like that. And anytime Masters would hit like a clothesline, it would be boom, like impact like that. Oof, my God. This guy was quick for a big man. How much did he weigh again? It was like 270 pounds. He moved around like a cruiserweight. Guy like that usually doesn't move around that fast, but damn, did he improve. And he should have been in the mid-card title contention, then eventually worked his way up to the world title. So that's what kills me here. He was doing so well on SmackDown around that time. Ugh, he was stuck in mid-card hell. Why no mid-card titles? And I already complained about that. Eventually, come April 2011, he was drafted back to Raw in the 2011 supplemental draft. The supplemental draft a year prior, he goes to SmackDown. Now he's back on Raw. Doesn't have one single match on Raw. He had a match on Superstars, which he lost to Jack Swagger, who was also traded in the supplemental draft that year. And unfortunately, on August the 4th, 2011, he was given his final release from WWE. He was future endeavored again, one last time. Might have been one of Johnny Ace's last future endeavors before he was demoted to road agent, because Johnny Ace, John Laurinaitis, became an on-screen general manager, authority figure. Backstage, in reality, he was replaced by Jane Geddes, who is a former LPGA golf champion for the ladies, and took over as the Senior Vice President of Talent Relations. And she did that for a while with Mark Carano. I only know this because of Total Divas. So Masters was released in August of 2011, and there was a promo on Raw that following week, a work shoot that CM Punk cut. And CM Punk did a lot of work shoots around this time because this was the summer of Punk. He was talking to Triple H or Johnny Ace, I can't remember exactly who. CM Punk vouched for him in a work shoot. He said, you get rid of guys who've worked so hard to get here, like Chris Masters, for instance, who's improved tremendously in the last year. What do? You fire him. He mentioned a couple other people. I think Harry Smith was one of them. D.H. Smith was let go, and it was like 5 releases around that time. I've not heard anything about Chris Masters since that time. He's grown his hair long, kind of like me. And he's done some bit parts of acting in movies, and I think he's traveled to Japan. I don't know if he ever made it to TNA, though. I haven't really looked at his career post-WWE, but that's about all I've got for Chris Mordetsky. So, another great superstar, but could have been used so much better. And this has been another great edition of Harry Fling Wrestling. I am your host, Harry Fling, and until next time, everybody, bye-bye.